Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. I got a special show today. I've got Miss Florida Real Estate, at least in my eyes, she is. I think she is in many. Miss Patti Ketcham. She's in her office at the Ketcham Group out in Tallahassee. She's also obviously on the Florida Real Estate Commission. So I reached out to her with all of this scuttlebutt about the NAR and the multiple, obviously, lawsuits that are going on. One of them was settled this week. And we want to talk about how is that going to affect you as a real estate agent, maybe just some tweaks in your business and some of the things that came out of it, and hopefully give you something to at the end of this, to maybe if you're going to change your business, maybe you're doing your business totally correct and all the recommendations that they're willing to do, but how is it actually going to affect you as time goes on? Because NAR claims, and I just was watching a video, NAR says they are not going to settle. They're going to take this all the way as far as they can do, which I have a feeling it might end up in the Supreme Court here. So I want to welcome the one and only Miss Patti Ketcham to the show. Patti, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Tracy, I'm delighted to hear from you yesterday and got a little bit of sweaty palms on this path we're all walking right now, but it's also kind of exciting. So I'm ready to dive in.
Well, so we were joking before we came on, and I said, like, this is like the stickers we see, don't drop your hair dryer in the bathtub, don't put your hand under the lawnmower when it's running, type of stuff, where some of the, hearing what the actual plaintiffs were claiming, like they didn't know it was negotiable, the commission. And then obviously they talk about steering, which is a bad word in the lending business. We know some, banks have gotten thing, but real estate agents steering people away because of the commissions they're going to be paid and so forth. Tap a little bit on what you know about some of these claims they're making, because we also know there's also some lawyering. I'm going to use that word like strategery, lawyering involved here, where they're going to throw a bunch of mud against the wall just to make it look like they got all these things, where a lot of it was just like, are you serious? Type of claims.
Okay, so let me address something you talked about earlier, and then I'll go a little bit more to Patti Ketcham's view on how we got here. All right. So first, to address something that, and part of this, I'm like y'all, I'm learning this stuff as it goes along. And I have a brokerage firm in Tallahassee. So my business model, what am I going to need to do different in order to serve my clients? What am I going to need to, what tools am I going to need to give my associates in order for them to serve their clients? But one of the things that sometimes, Tracy, there's like this aha moment. So I've been teaching a lot the NAR course, ABR, Accredited Buyer Representative. And so that is deeply entrenched in this buyer brokerage agreement. It's been out there forever, but they're really doing good. NAR is about keeping it updated. So I'm on the NAR level of what was agreed to in some of these lawsuits. So when they had the class action lawsuit, the two ones several weeks ago, the two class action lawsuits, there was money paid out, but there was also some agreements from the real estate community as to here's how we're going to behave going forward. So this goes directly to the steering thing. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before.
Now, was it just to clarify? Because Remax was in the one that's been, I guess we want to call settled. What's NAR? Is NAR involved in that as well, or they were just after Remax in this particular one? And is NAR changing, or is just Remax saying, hey, here, we'll pay you some money and this is what we'll do?
Good point. My understanding, NAR was not named in the class action lawsuit, and there were two of them. There was one against Anywhere Realty, which is a huge blanket that covers a lot of companies like Corcoran, Coldwell Banker. Some of the major players in our real estate.
Is involved in that group as well, if I'm not
mistaken. I'm sorry, who?
Keller Williams.
I think that was the second lawsuit. It's how sad that in our world we can't keep our lawsuits straight. But there were two class action lawsuits, and they settled for quite a large amount of money, and an agreement with the named defendants in those lawsuits, which my understanding was not NAR. But the reality is that's going to bleed over to us. I mean, these are some major players. And this was, to me, some good news. And I want to speak to that steering thing. One of the agreements made in the class action lawsuits is that you did not have to be a member of NAR. Well, as a licensee, that was always a choice to join NAR or not. So that was an easy okay. The other thing was you could not search, when we search an MLS as a realtor and a member of an MLS, you could not search anymore based on compensation. So searching for a buyer, you couldn't go in and search based on compensation. Well, I never knew you could in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, not a problem. But one of the other things, and this is one we've already seen starting to shift out and spread out, is that people can now put listings into their MLS system and offer zero compensation. Now that's a paradigm shift, and NAR has already said that's fine. So, and some of the larger MLSs have already started doing that. So that's coming. I mean, I can't imagine that isn't going to be where we see ourselves, particularly first quarter 2024, my prediction. So there used to be an NAR rule that you had to offer some compensation. It could be as low as $1 or a penny. That rule has been removed. So in response to these class action lawsuits, we're going to see zero compensation. All right. Also agreed on in those class action lawsuits is if you had the capability, which I didn't even know we could, you can no longer just only show people properties that have compensation to the buyer's realtor through the listing office. All right.
Slow that one down for me.
Okay, I'll do that one again.
Gumpify it.
Okay, yeah. All right. In our normal real estate world, for a number of years, the listing office received compensation from the seller. Mm-hmm. And that compensation was then shared. And this is negotiated with the seller on what does that sharing look like? What is that percentage? And that's always been shared, and it's always been negotiable. But in order to attract people to that listing, as a seller, let's have the compensation, let there be an agreement of compensation to whoever brings the buyer to the table.
Okay.
So that's what you saw when you looked at a multiple listing. That's something in a house listed in multiple listing. Typically at the bottom of the page, you would see here's the promised compensation if you bring a buyer. Well, if that's going to start saying zero, I can tell you that ship has sailed. We're going to start seeing where normally we would see a promised compensation. Go ahead.
But is it really zero, or they're putting zero just so that they're getting around saying that the steering thing, because we kind of started with that?
Oh, I think it'll be a little of both. But here's what, to me, was a aha moment when I read through the class action lawsuits, and here's the agreement. Mm-hmm. The agreement was, as a realtor, we can no longer search. So you could not go in and just eliminate everything that had zero compensation. We've agreed we will not do that. And I think that's kind of along your steering thing, because that's like steering somebody in a direction that perhaps is not best for them.
Right.
So we are not allowed to do that. But, and this is the but, part of that was unless you're directed by the buyer to do so. So let's look at future conversations we'll be having with our buyers. Mm-hmm. First of all, we've got to tell them how we're paid, and we've got to tell them what our value is. And you're going to hear that a lot. What's your value? What's your worth? I mean, somebody needs to go on and make t-shirts, All right. What's your value? What's your worth? This is what I do for you. And the compensation can come in a variety of ways. It can come through when you pay for the house. The seller has built into the cost of the house, which you're paying, compensations for the realtors involved, the listing agent, and me, the person that's representing the buyer. But that has always been negotiable, and you will have sellers that are saying, I'll pay the listing agent, but I am not paying the buying agent. I'm not paying the person that's bringing the buyer to the table. So in that case, I will need to look to you as the buyers for my compensation. And that's where people are going to go into the buyer brokers agreement, that written agreement. If I'm not compensated through the listing office, through the multiple listing service, then I need to be compensated by you.
I know one of the things on that list that I wrote down was that RE/MAX was agreeing to, and probably the larger group as well, I think, they can no longer claim the buyer services are free. I guess that was something that.
Yes. Yes, and that's a critical point, because that's part of why we're sitting here today, is because, and I've said it, I'm guilty. Said, look, when I'm working with a buyer, I'm paid by the seller, so the services to you are free. Well, now, when you really think about this, that's built into the price of the home, which the buyer's paying. So no. Now, if you truly want to run a nonprofit, there's no prohibition to that. Any of us are allowed to work for free. And I have absolutely had situations, and I'm sure there's other realtors, where we have done this with zero compensation. But here's the thing I want to point out, because I think this could be, this could put us where we want to be, where we're able to help our buyers. When you're dealing with a first-time home buyer, when you're dealing with a first-generation home buyer, when you're dealing with a VA borrower, when you're dealing with someone that doesn't have the means to just reach in their hip pocket and pull out a wad of cash and start paying us for helping them find a home, if they give you, the buyer's person, written instructions, please only show me homes where you're going to be compensated through the listing office. Right. That's going to help a lot. Okay. So I don't think that didn't click till I had read it 2 or 3 times. So we'll need to have very upfront, which we should be doing anyway, very upfront conversations with our buyers. Here's this form, and I think you're going to see various forms of buyer representation, come out and get tweaked and stuff over these next several months. And if you have the means to pay me, and we can find you something where I'm not being compensated through the listing office, let's rock and roll. And here's what that compensation is going to look like. But if you're not in a position where that is an option to you, then you need to, in writing, instruct me to only show you homes where my compensation is coming through the listing office. And my understanding from reading that, and this is in response to the class action lawsuits, that was one of the agreements. So I think we're going to need to have, we're going to need to have those upfront conversations anyway. Yeah. But I think that may be the route that keeps the door open to help many buyers. If you tell me to only show you houses, it's coming from you, the buyer. I don't have the money to pay you, Patti. So only show me houses, and I will put this in writing, where you are compensated through the listing office. That, I think,
that's your ticket.
Helps solve some of the problem. Does that make sense, Tracy?
Yeah, 100%. And from the lending side, the first initial thing I thought is, okay, obviously a lot of these programs, whether it's FHA or even the conventional products, you're limited on seller concessions. That now they come out and say, well, you can get so much seller concessions, and you also can be written in there that they're going to get, the agent they can build in a certain percentage. The seller can give the buyer's agent a certain percentage there. So in that angle too, as far as from the lending side. You know,
No.
yeah. I don't see that happening because when the appraisers go out there and look at it, they see the contract and see the seller concessions
Yes.
already, and now you're going to build another 2 or 3% on top of that. So now they got to compensate for the value to cover all that. Now you start stretching people.
Well, I totally agree. And I was in lending for a number of years, and I'm married to an appraiser. So I always say I'm a groupie. I'm with the band. Okay. So I get the behind the scenes, and my husband Clay doesn't do residential and hadn't for a number of years, but he did. He did FHAs. He did, appraisals for mortgage lending purposes for years and years and years. And what this boils down to, guys, if you're willing to pay $400,000 for a house, it's in MLS listed at $400,000. It doesn't make sense for a buyer to say, no, let me pay you $410,000. Let me pay. I know I can buy it all day long for $400,000, right, but I want to pay you more than what you're willing to sell it for. So that dog ain't gonna hunt. Right. Because they're doing market value, not appraisals based on taking care of the real estate community. That's not of an appraisal. Exactly. So when people go, oh, well, you just build it in, you just add it into the contract. Y'all, that ain't gonna work. Not right. For an appraiser that knows what they're doing.
100%.
Yeah.
One of the big again, I was really combing through YouTube and so forth and watching the different videos of some of these guys have been following this all along. One of the words that they were concentrating on, this one gentleman, was transparency. I guess that's yes. where they felt that we've kind of been going through, or the real estate community has been kind of going through their motions and assuming the consumer knows the things that we do, when really these people are claiming they didn't. Although the one plaintiff in the one lawsuit, mother was a real estate agent for over 30 years. She herself had bought and sold 4 or 5 homes, through her life. And her mother was a real estate agent and didn't understand that she could negotiate the commission. I call
right.
On that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I love to tell stories, so and all of mine are true. But I was in real estate many years ago in the resale market, then went into mortgage lending as a loan officer for a number of years, and then went back into real estate. So when I became a mortgage loan officer, I understood the real estate part of this. I knew how realtors were paid. And I will never forget, it was an epiphany moment in my life. And this is how long ago it was. Tracy, we had these things called typewriters. I don't know if you've ever seen one, but it was a typewriter. I was filling out the 1003. I was completing the loan application, the 1003, on a typewriter. And the sweet little precious couple had just bought new construction. They're sitting across from me. They're chatting. I'm typing. And I hear them say, and the house, and you can't make this up. This is really a true story. The house they were buying was $100,000. And they said, the realtor always gives you a really good present at the closing. And I'm thinking, well, sometimes, but I'm thinking this to myself, just eavesdropping. And they said, there's no refrigerator with this house. And Susie, the realtor, who they loved, I mean, they liked Susie. Susie was doing a good job for them. She's going to get $6,000. So let's tell her that we'd really like a refrigerator. And I went, whoa. I said, let me tell you how realtors are paid. And I literally pulled the 8 by 10 sheet of paper out, and I wrote $100,000 times 6%, because that was the transaction they were involved in. And I said, 3,000 is going to the listing office, 3,000 is going to whoever brings the buyer to the table. And I said, and then it's going to be split internally within that firm. And at that point in time, it was a business model where, and I had been in real estate, where it was not uncommon for the realtor to get half of what came into the office. So I said, Susie's not getting $6,000. Susie's probably getting $1,500. I said, so I don't know what kind of refrigerator you want, but you know, and they were astonished, and they said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea she's done all this work for $1,500." And I said, "Yeah, and that's gross." So, and then I want to make this point even deeper, and this is where it was like one of those God epiphany things.
Right.
So we had a loan officer meeting that same day, later that afternoon, and we were waiting. We were in the boardroom, and we were waiting for whoever would to come talk to us. And I asked my fellow loan officers, who were very intelligent people and been doing this a long time, I said, y'all, on a $100,000 transaction, how much do you think the realtor that brings you the buyer is making? And guess what they said, Tracy?
$6,000.
$6,000. Because guys, what is our arrogance that we think people are worrying about how we're paid? They're worrying about home inspections. They got monkey chatter for days going on of people giving them advice. How we're compensated doesn't even make the radar screen. So that day, from that day forward, in everything I've given out to once I went back into real estate, I have how we're paid. And I have a Sesame Street example of how we're paid. I still do it based on that $100,000,
right?
Because it's easy to understand.
Yeah.
Yes, and one of the things, if we had had that transparency all along, because part of that discussion then becomes, if I'm not your girl, kick me to the curb quick, because unless I'm sitting at the closing table with you, I'm not paid. So I think part of this is, and I'm going to be very blunt, arrogance on our part, that we think that we're that important, that they're worried about our compensation. They're not. They got way more things to worry about. So you got to have, and to me, it's an easy conversation. It's not a tough conversation, particularly on the buying side. You know, I'm paid if I'm sitting at the closing table with you. So if I'm not going to be the one you choose to help you on this journey, you need to let me know immediately. And I don't care how you let me know. You can do the old Seinfeld, it's not you, it's me routine, and I'll honor it. So buyers always have the right to break up with us, but if they're not going to use us, shame on us that we didn't let them know we're not going to be compensated.
Yeah.
Shame on us.
I think, in one of the comments that, one of the videos I was watching, guys, is, every time there's a challenge, like in any industry, there's a challenge out there, whether it was, COVID or the other thing, we're going to come out better here. After listening to this, I think the money is gross. I think the amount of money but I'm sure that'll, I don't know, calculating what the lawyers are going to cost them and so forth. But, some of these things I didn't see them really going, really putting the real estate industry, realtors in general, on their heels. I mean, some of it was transparency. The brokerage cannot mandate that there's a minimum commission that you can represent someone, for. It says no office minimum commission mandated by the brokerage.
Right.
We've got to feed ourselves. I don't believe, although I think people think we should do it for a lot less, but when you sit down with them and explain your $100,000 transaction and how many transactions do you have time in the month to do, and the good, the bad, the indifferent, it was great, everybody was making a lot of money last year, it's slowed down a little bit and people are falling out, and you're through it, the thick and thin, and type of thing. And I think a lot of people don't understand, especially commission-based. Of course, a lot of people fear. I think you and I know we've lived in a commission-based industry for a long time, where other people go, "Oh my God, you're commission-based? You're not guaranteed a check next week?" No, I'm not actually. So we got to go to work, and the amount of time, we actually put more time in probably than the 9-to-5 person to earn the equal amount. When it actually breaks down to the hourly wage.
Well, and I think, to your point, Tracy, but I also think, guys, we got ourselves into this position. We got to own it. And now it has slapped us in the face. You think about all the realtors that were are encouraged to announce that they are $1 million producers. I'm a $1 million producer. Well, the public then thinks you made $1 million.
Yeah.
Now, if you do the math
Yeah.
on you've closed $1 million in real estate, which is truly what that means, you've maybe made $14,000.
Yep.
So come on. And I also think, and I'm just being bluntly honest here, because quite frankly, I ain't got nothing to lose. All right. We have been training these brand new baby realtors that we've been training them on maneuvering. We've been training them on how to out strategize somebody. We've been training them on scripts. We've been training them on overcoming objections. And it has come home to roost, because we also have these precious little sweet realtors that are doing these bougie TikToks where they, are dressed to the nines. And, there's somebody that was convicted down in Miami for taking, and she's a realtor, and for using, she took her that PPP money that was available during COVID, and she leased a Bentley. And so so all of this is fake. All of this whole stuff is not real. And so why don't we, I mean, it's going to hurt, but it's time for us to be a serious adjustment. And those of us that find ourselves in the privileged role of training people coming into this, they need to know their contract. They need to understand local neighborhoods. They need to provide true value, not shiny things.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, I'm sick to death of scripts. Never liked them, never have. Cold calling works, but I ain't going to do it. I promise y'all I will go to my grave never making one. So no wonder people are seeing us through this unrealistic filter, because we built it.
Well, and that kind of actually was one thought that went through my mind, is the technology and the social media now. Because, I mean, what's been going on as far as, 6% being kind of the number, give or take, for as far as I can remember, and I'm sure you can tell me different. It was different at some other time. But now that social media is out there and everyone has a different way to advertise their home, they're going, well, why are we being forced into this MLS? Is kind of what I was reading into this lawsuit, because a lot of it had to do with the background of, if you're putting it in the MLS, you've got to put, that commission for the buyer's agent, or at least it was perceived that you had to do it in that sort of thing. And now has technology moved it to where these people think they can do it on their own. I mean, you and I know everyone should have a real estate professional, because it's just too many, to guide the transaction smoothly and efficiently, and to show your house the best, for sure. But the perceived from the public, again, it's perception of the public, is that, again, because of the social media, these driving the Bentley, or they're watching, the shows on Bravo and so forth, where these agents are, type of thing, and they're selling these $15 million, $20 million homes, when in reality, that's not reality.
No, it's not. And I think I go back to how life works. And one of the things I've realized as I've made this journey is it's a pendulum. And let's talk about emotional support animals and service animals. For years, it was a German Shepherd were allowed in restaurants because they were seeing eye dogs.
Right.
And that worked, but it didn't meet the needs. It truly didn't. It was too restrictive. So in order to correct that, we have to overcorrect. I just think that's the patterns in life. Yeah. So we
politics is a perfect example of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Way overcorrected. I mean, you had, I was teaching in the Orlando area, and one of my realtor students in a class, had worked at Disney, and they had support chickens and a support snake. And I was like, did they come the same day? I would have loved to have seen that play out. But it went wackadoo, it went totally wackadoo. Well, now we're okay. Now we seem to have hit what is a reasonable balance. Guys, this is what's going on right now in our industry, and it's going to overcorrect. And you're going to have buyers, because they do have tools they didn't have in the past.
Right.
It's where the need to have the realtor find you the home is not as nearly like it used to be. When people come to me now, they've already got their list of houses. They've been on the internet and have found the list of houses.
Yeah.
So the skill set that we've had to hone and should have had all along is understanding the contract, negotiating skills, watching the deadlines, understanding the promises that are made. You always say a real estate sales contract is nothing but a set of promises between adults with deadlines. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to help them get to that reasonable place. And they're going to not need us for a while if you're on the buying side. I mean, that's coming. Y'all can take that to the bank. So, and we're going to overcorrect. And then people are going to be harmed. Because they didn't have anybody, so to speak, in their corner. And what makes me sad is it's going to be those who have the least options available financially. And so then that's going to create an outcry, because that's not appropriate either. And then we're going to settle back down. Now, what that looks like, settle down, I don't know. But Patty's prediction is we're going to overcorrect. So if I were in your shoes, as any of you that are new to this real estate, that are listening to this, if the phrase you have to list to last, you can go ahead and monogram that on everything you own, because that's going to come true. I mean, that's because people aren't going after that. They're going after the buyer side of this. Now, I think we're going to end up okay. We made it through having to have home inspections. That was going to be the end of the real estate industry. We made it through discovering that there's a clause 17 on a mortgage that says, no, you can't do a wraparound. We'll call it due. We made it through those. That was going to be the end of the real estate industry.
Right.
Oh my gosh, when they discovered radon, that was the end of the real estate. So this is life's pattern. And in order to, when you have something like this, it has to overcorrect to get to okay. And I think the challenge for many of us that truly loves this is staying flexible. I keep thinking, and I shared it with Tracy, shared it with you, Tracy, last night. I sent it to you. That clip from Friends where they're trying to move the couch up the staircase. Yeah. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Whatever you're doing now, don't order a whole lot of those publications, because you're getting ready to pivot. So we are going to have to stay flexible, but we've always been flexible. Those of us that have lasted through the years have adapted our services to the needs of our buyers and sellers as the market has changed. And that's going to stay the same.
You tapped a little bit on some of the, again, two things, who's going to benefit and who's going to fall out. And you mentioned it's going to be a challenge for some of the buyer's agents, but I mean, from my side, and I'm not a real estate agent, I'm on the lending side. I'm looking in. My wife's an agent, but I'm looking as a listing agent. And you're going to that listing appointment. Are you not explaining that? Hey, we need to get 6% because we want it. There's still that incentive is still out there, even though you don't have to advertise you're getting incentive, but that the buyer's agent is going to get something. And if you, as all the things that you do as a listing agent, stage a home, address the curb appeal, do those things to a home to get more people to walk in, do an open house to get more people to walk in, hopefully to show the listing agent you're doing something. You also have to be common sense and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we need to be offering an incentive for that buyer's agent to bring by their best buyers as well. I mean, it's capitalism.
Oh, I totally agree, Tracy. And what I predict is coming is you're going to see sellers not want to offer compensation, which has always been their right,
Mm-hmm.
but it's now going to be exercised more frequently. And then I think what you'll see is they're going to stand just as we always do. This is reacting to the market. They're going to be real firm that this is how we're doing it. By gosh, this price, these terms. And if you get a buyer, you're great. But what if it's 6 months from now? And the buyers are going, I don't like your price and I don't like your terms.
Right.
Then you're going to see sellers go, okay, we need to revisit this. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that type of thing where you're going to see a seller go, okay, we don't have to offer compensation anymore. We never did, but we're not going to argue that. I'm not going to offer compensation. My house is going to sell top dollar without any help from a buyer's agent who's been looking at the market. And I'm not going to need it. And there's going to be houses that sell for that. But it's absolutely going to happen. Mm-hmm. But the majority of us regular folks are going to find ourselves having to adjust.
Because I was thinking how I wanted to phrase this particular question or topic is just, what are they just saying? Agents listening to this, in my opinion, you should not be panicking. You should just be updating yourself and maybe tweaking your presentation. We talked about it here. It's been talked about. If you go on YouTube and pull up, the different people talking about the lawsuit, is agents have got to get better at explaining what their value is. As we talked about that right at the beginning, what their value is. So, the fallout, there's going to be some people that are just going to throw up their arms and walk away from this because they were going to quit anyway. The others that are going to say, well, we just got to adjust, to the marketplace, like how to negotiate after a home inspection. I didn't realize home inspection was a big thing that set the real estate market back. But
oh my gosh. We may as well all turn our licenses in. If people do an inspection on a home, they're never going to buy it. I mean, I can remember that panic and my heart beating fast, like, oh my gosh, this is a major industry crisis. And I want to quote my beloved husband, and this is paraphrasing something he tells me. He goes, Patti, you need to always remember people really want to sleep indoors. Yes.
Well, that was my next statement was, next year, this isn't going to change the amount of homes that are bought and sold.
No. It's not. People, and even with the interest rates going up, and y'all, when I was in, and Tracy and I've talked about this, when I went from real estate to mortgage lending, which was commission based. Also, I went into a market where the best fixed rate you could get was Barnett Bank, and it was 14%. And y'all, people still slept indoors. So,
I love that.
So I always believe if you are blessed enough to serve in a market where it's cheaper to buy than to rent, if you just look at that monthly payment, block out that interest rate, it's too painful to look at. Just don't look at it. Mm-hmm. If it's still, everybody's making somebody's mortgage payment. You're either making your landlord's or you're making yours. So as long as that great truth holds out, we're going to be okay. And the lending market, which you're involved in, Tracy, mm-hmm. we're going to have arms. Adjustable rates are going to come out. They're not the evil spawn of Satan that everybody thinks they are. They can work very well. So the good realtors that are going to last are going to learn how to do adjustable rate mortgages. They're going to learn how incredibly important it is when you go list a property to ask the seller, is your home assumable? Is your mortgage assumable? And if it's FHA and VA, it is. Mm-hmm. It's an assumable mortgage. They're going to make real good friends with a seedy guy in a strip mall that offer smoke cigarettes and offer second mortgages. They're going to become our new best friends. I mean, we're going to have to adapt to this world that I've already lived in the past. And unfortunately, my CD guy has died, so I'm going to have to meet a new second mortgage guy. And so do you see what I'm saying? We're going to have to expand what we know. And quite frankly, I mean,
gives another reason for a good lunch and learn. That's what it does.
Yes, exactly. If I was in lending, I'd be all over realtors talking about assumability and arms, because that's coming. And you as a buyer's agent, if this is the power you bring to the table, and anybody that's taken any of my classes know I say this all the time, you ain't got to know this much more. You just got to know that much more than everybody else. And so the tools that the buyer's agents brings to the table is not going to be out strategizing somebody. It's going to be understanding assumable mortgages. It's going to be understanding of adjustable rates. If those come into the market, which I predict they are, it's going to be having a relationship with the listing agent where you can pick up the phone and call them and say, look, I noticed that y'all are offering no compensation, but I've also noticed this property has now been on the market 3 months. Is there some flexibility if I bring an offer where your seller would be willing to compensate me for the work I'm doing for the buyers? And that's going to be based a lot on the relationships we've built with our fellow realtors. Because
that goes back to a story when I had John originally talking about your story and how, like you said, for the first whatever amount of years, you never walked into the board of realtors, and how you missed out on the many relationships that you could have made during that time, which I think you've caught up and surpassed everybody else by now.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to work overtime. And I also think we also need to realize, and I want this point to really sink home to our Florida realtors here. A lot of the information we're getting and that we're going to get in the coming months is going to deal with agency. There's going to be a lot of strong emphasis on agency, and a lot of the stuff coming from NAR, because I teach for them also. So I see the material. It goes really deep dive on agency. All right, I had a conversation with the person that's in charge of this education stuff coming out of NAR just last Friday, as a matter of fact. And I said, I don't know if Florida's 25 years ahead of the country or we've been under a rock. I think we're 25 years ahead. So you're going to see a lot of this education coming from outside Florida that has not been Floridaized, okay? So many of the education loud voices who are wise people, this is not a slam on them, these are very wise people, but they're coming from states where disclosure of your relationship as a dual agent, transaction broker, single agent, no brokerage relationship, buyer broker, this is a big deal to them. I believe we've gotten past that. I could be wrong. Well, time will tell. So when you hear that, take a deep breath. Be thankful you're in the state of Florida, that it's okay. We dealt with agency, the wiser people ahead of me in the 80s, in the 90s on the Real Estate Commission dealt with agency. Most of the people in the state of Florida are transaction brokers. Take a deep breath. It's okay. So let's don't plow fields we don't need to plow.
I want to finish up with this because I know you got a 2:30 here and we're closing out. One of the questions, like who is what's going on, and circling back to the lawsuit, who really is ultimately, I mean, are the buyers and sellers of real estate really benefiting from this lawsuit?
I'm going to answer as Patti Ketcham. Okay. Yeah, I think they will. When it's all said and done, when it all shakes out, because I think this is going to get rid of people that are in this business for the wrong reason. If you don't have a
wrong reason, meaning like quick cash, or
yes,
or these guys that are doing these they're listing the house, pay me. They don't actually ever show it or anything, but they put it up on the MLS for you, that kind of thing.
Yep. Yep. If you don't have a servant's heart, now I'm talking residential, not, and let me point something out. Y'all, commercial real estate's been this way forever. They're looking at the residential people going, what's your problem? And I've sold commercial real estate. And the thing is, you find 3 properties you want to show to your buyer, and you call the 3 listing agents and say, when you listed this, was there compensation put in if I bring you a buyer? And if they say no, then you have to have a discussion with your buyer. So they've been doing this for years. So this is no big deal to them. But I do think when you have people that are drawn into real estate for shiny things, when they're drawn into real estate because they could do cute social media TikToks, when they are drawn into real estate to see how many followers they can get in social media, when they never bother to go to a contracts class, when they couldn't spell code of ethics if you held a gun to their head, and they do, and when I talk about the preamble and under all is the land, they don't get it. I think that's going to be okay when they go on down the road. I think the survivors in this are the people that are in there that understand the contract, that understand the level of service that's needed not only on the listing side, but on the buying side, and can look somebody dead in the eye and say, here is the value I bring to the table.
Excellent. I'm going to close out with that. I appreciate your time, Patti. Any last thoughts that you want to throw out there? I think nothing. Good.
Well, maybe guys, maybe instead of maneuver, strategize, and outsmart people, we go to kindness, respect, and grace.
There you go. I appreciate your time today, Patti, doing this last minute show, and I hope everyone listening gets a little bit out of it. It's not a panic. It's time why it's slow, right? Time it's why it's slow to tweak your business, get a little polish your presentations up, and how are you going to present to the buyer and seller? Because I think it's important. The listing agent is not giving up on this. You want to have commission for that buyer's agent because you want them to bring people over. So
absolutely.
And go online. I learned a lot here just in the last 24 hours. I just saw the lawsuit come out. There's a ton of stuff online where people are really breaking the lawsuit down for you in a real simple format, as we hopefully did today, and because everyone has a different opinion, but it's all real estate people explaining to you, that have really been staying on top of this from the beginning. I think it was 2019 when the original lawsuit was filed. So these come up. So I hope you have a great afternoon.
It's going to be an interesting ride.
Yes. Like I said, it's only going to improve as all these things have come up in our lives. We're just going to get better. This is just a checkup from the neck up. So.
Yep, I agree. So y'all grab hold of that pendulum and ride it till it hits the new normal.
Right.
Thank you, Tracy, for your time.
Thank you. You have a super afternoon, Patti.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for caring about what we do.